Thank you all, everyone. I'd like to start with a small personal story as we get started. It was a hot summer day. I was in grade 11, and I saw my dad waiting for me at the bus stop. And I was like, am I not too old for a parent pickup at the bus stop? And he had this wide smile on his face, and I was like, oh, he's up to something. In the background, my parents and I were having a household debate on what I should be taking up in grades 11 and 12, and I was winning the battle there. But my dad sneakily went and met up with the principal and turned the tables on me. And as soon as I got off the bus, he said, "You're not giving up on STEM education and STEM subjects." And I was shattered at the time. I found STEM difficult, and I found math particularly cumbersome. And at that time, I was like, my world came to an end. But on hindsight today, as a student, as a parent of a student, I think I know why I felt that way. I was building a big building on a very shaky foundation. I was adding floors every year, and only I, or probably not even I, knew how shaky that foundation was. Over the next 2 years, I worked relentlessly, built my foundation brick by brick, and also built my confidence in the process. And today, as I'm looking back, moderating this session, I often wonder, who's doing this for the 158 million students in the public education system in India? Who's going to be their mentors, guides, coaches? And how do we bring this in a manner that can bring systemic change and a systemic environment for STEM learning for lifelong for such children? And that's what we're going to be discussing here today. With that, I'd like to start with one question, and this is for Monica. How would you diagnose what are the problems with STEM education in the public education system in India?
Thanks, Niharika, firstly for sharing this very touching story, and so glad to have you around as a moderator here. Hello, everyone. So, I think if you talk about the current scenario in terms of the public education system in India, firstly I would start by saying that it's not that enough is not being done. I think there is a lot that every stakeholder is trying to do in their own bit, whether it's government, whether they are NGO partners, organizations, enterprises, or CSR initiatives across. However, still the magnificent problem that we have, I would want to kind of divide it into a few of those areas. One is the lack of infrastructure. And this infrastructure is really not just about the labs as such, but the infra in terms of the rural-urban divide, the difference in the infrastructure in spaces like the semi-urban areas, and the urban space. Apart from that, the digital divide, which further really kind of increases this gap. So I think infrastructure remains one of the key areas which still is like quite a gap even after doing so much. Secondly, I would say the quality STEM educators, quality educators who can really drive this entire momentum of STEM education for the children in the schools. And in the public spaces, of course, this is the large and the humongous number of children that Niharika spoke about. We need to cater to with the passion to really make a difference. And the third leg, which I would say is really, really deeper, which I would, I think even if we have an infra or a qualified educator, but till the time we have the stereotype and the stereotypical thoughts and the gender gap, even if there is access, I think that remains a problem. So therefore, I would see it that the issue is not only at an infrastructure level, but really much deeper from a social change impact as well. So I think largely that's how I would see.
Right. Thanks for that, Monica. Lack of infrastructure, lack of quality STEM educators. Satyajit, would you like to add to that?
So I think, look, I think somewhere, and I'll try to keep it very short because I think Monica sort of hit the nail on its head. But really, I would say, I think one of the biggest issues probably is the fact that in India, education somewhere is held hostage to policies which move very slowly. As we are all aware, the new, the national education policies taken over 2-3 decades, the last version to get finalized and come out there. And I think, and while the education policy now does incorporate a number of sort of steps, a number of initiatives which would contribute to STEM education, but I think for me the biggest issue is public education is held hostage somewhere to slow policy making. Obviously, the fact that possibly the amount of outlay, etc., which should go into education for a country like ours, which has a huge population, which has a and obviously which needs and most of our children do go through public education. So I think for me the two key things to look at is how fast and how can we improve policy making there, and two, how can that contribute to making STEM education more up with the times.
Couldn't be said better. Education is held hostage to policy. And in that context and environment that we are dealing with, Asim, would you like to tell us a little bit about which interventions have you seen have worked well and few that you felt have not worked well? And also tell us a little bit about the method, scale, mechanics of these interventions and why you felt, what happened, why it happened.
Okay, so my name is Asim. Good afternoon to everyone. So, couple of things that really worked were involving the community in the actions. We had, for example, we have a CSR project where we made a school. The school construction was part of it, but that school was made within the community. So the dropout chances, significantly drop, because if the child is not coming, then we would reach out to the parents and say why the child is not coming. And also the reachability of a school becomes easier. That is what has been experienced. That is something that has really worked. And especially when I'm seeing the trends these days into CSR and STEM education and everything, you automatically start talking about STEM for girls. But what really worked was including men in the debate. The including of men in the debate of how STEM can be integrated with AI and STEM can be integrated with women education. I think that really paid rich dividends. I'll tell you why. Because if you're continuing to educate the girls in isolation, I don't know whether it will be, we are yet to see the results, but I don't know whether it will pay rich dividends or not. So I think that those two things played, and you have co-education schools for a reason. Okay, but if within that co-education school you're making isolations and silos, that may not be such a wise idea. So those two things I think really worked for us.
Wow. Involving community and becoming inclusive and not bending backward towards women and doing only STEM for women and girls. Suren, if you'd like to come in on this.
Sure. Thanks, Niharika, and thanks, everyone. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. just to give a background about how we are into STEM and what we do. I'm from CGI, I represent CGI, and we are into STEM education for the past 6 years. STEM is one of our flagship projects. To put in numbers, we are in the space for 6 years, and we reach out to, or we associate with, more than 100 schools and reach out to more than 1,20,000 students year on year. So we started with 10 schools, and we are currently at more than 100 schools that we cater to on STEM education. What worked well for us in STEM in this past 6 years is the partnerships. For us, we work with STEM with the partner organization as well as the government. We sign agreement not only with the partner organization, we also bring in the government to be part of it. So we work with Atal Innovation Mission also in this project. As we take up the schools, we sign the intent with both of them and work with them. It's working well because both of them monitor each other. The partner organization also gives inputs to the government, and government also gives inputs to the partner organization, and we are there to work with both of them. So that worked really well for us, and we have been supporting not only with the partner organization, we are also having the government involved, where we have we have gone one step above the STEM education in supporting Atal Innovation Mission in building their chatbot. So the partnership comes into picture that way, where we can do more on STEM when you involve multiple stakeholders who are part of the system.
Thanks for that, Suren. I guess partnerships and the partnership model where you have private, public, and government all working together is the way to go.
And Niharika, one more point I would like to add here is, you said what worked really well. I think when we talk about STEM education, especially school STEM education, we talk a lot about assets. And STEM education is much more than asset, right? All the NGOs you meet, they'll say, okay, we are doing a mini science lab. But then are you engaging your employees as a corporate in that school where you have created that science lab? ऐसा तो नहीं कि जब वो आपने विजिट किया तब तो वो लैब है, उसके बाद प्रिंसिपल ने वो लैब एक गठरी में बांध के और पीछे रख दी. So I think if unless handled, you are doing more than the asset creation. It is one important part, but then you have to go beyond and engage with the beneficiaries there.
Fair point. Assets can become liabilities if not used well. Yeah. Right. I also want to talk about how we can be more inclusive when it comes to STEM education. And Asim actually brought this point out, but I want to go into it a little deeper because there is a gender divide as well that we see. And how do we, solve for that gender divide? How do we solve for becoming more inclusive towards differently abled and marginalized students in rural and remote areas? And Satyajit, if you'd like to contribute to that.
Sure. So I think that's a great question, and I think we actually did analyze that because we basically decided to take up STEM education not only in India, obviously in India we have a CSR mandate and all of that, but in other geographies where we are. So we looked at Philippines, we looked at Eastern Europe, we looked at, and of course, some of the other geographies are extremely developed geographies. We didn't really look that deep into them. And of course, South Africa, these are the 4 geographies we looked at. And we found that, except for Eastern Europe, where actually women have done quite well, and that the representation of women in sort of the, the STEM side, as scientists, in fact, into even the IT sector, etc., has been, they're quite well represented. But in the other geographies, we obviously saw there was a starting from childhood, I think women are somewhere expected to take on different roles, right? So I think what we started doing was we started focusing our STEM programs in these areas into promoting, or trying to get more women to participate. So whether it was in South Africa, we did hackathons for girls, right? And to to sort of welcome them or to indoctrinate them towards picking up STEM education. And then, of course, in India and Philippines, we've also been doing coding programs for women. The intention was that, of course, I mean, considering the fact that if you have to build inclusivity, if you have to get more women into it, we need to create role models. We need to get, make it interesting. You can't always sort of just do just throw in a program once in a while. You need to continuously work on it. And we started doing it consistently over, so we're doing it, I mean, this is our third year in many of these geographies, and we've seen a real difference. And I think what we've started also looking at is, of course, we don't hire out of these programs, but we've started trying to do, sort of combine with organizations like, and pushing them post-STEM education into programs along with AWS, etc., for slightly older girls, etc., so they can get qualified, or at least at an initial level, so they can get jobs, etc. I think the point being that we need to somewhere connect the dots between the education and later making these women also realize that there are jobs out there for them, that this is a complete, sort of, it's not something that we're just doing to get women there just for as a symbol, but it's something which will help them in their careers going forward.
Thanks for that, Satyajit. And I'd like to move to Asim now for a controversial point of view then, because he said that, the gender divide and we are bending over backward there. So tell us what your thoughts are here.
No, so the point is, then again, if you're not creating a subgroup within a group, then that may not be. So tomorrow, if you have to become a world beater, you have to rub shoulders with all the sort of people. That is also the other side of inclusion. You're talking about the other side of inclusion is also about the language inclusion. Many people, when they talk about science and mathematics, there's a certain language or a particular linguistic, and which is also there in the NEP. NEP is talking about removing those linguistic barriers when it comes to. Another point here is that whenever you talk about STEM education, you're talking about 6 to 8 preferably, the 6 to 8 standard. But the 9th and 12th standard is the critical part. That is where the most of the dropout, because national education policy and the education RTE is also talking about education till class 8th. And what happens to class 9 to 12th, that is where the main decision making is happening. If you're not catching them at that place, that is also exclusion for me. So inclusion, when you talk, and the funny part is that you start talking about higher education, people will talk about education in 9 to 12th. Then you talk about 9 to 12, people will talk about primary education. So you see that there is a problem at all levels. But what happens to those people who are in 9 to 12 right now? So you have to also take them into account. And so A is linguistic barriers, B is across the board when it comes to school education. Those are the two major points for me.
All right. So how do we solve for 9 to 12 presently, and how do we solve for the new generation that is going to come in to 9 to 12? So Rain, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So when we talk about inclusion, of course, yes, first is girl children education, and in our program, 60% or more than 60% are girl children. While can we step beyond girl children also, while we have included them? We have started experimenting from this year on how can we take STEM to children with special needs as well. Most of the STEM learning is about touch and feel. It's not theory based. What we teach for children in the school, current STEM learning is also touch and feel. Can we take touch and feel to a much more larger audience or larger children group who currently do not have? While will their curriculum have it, or how do they use it in the future, has to be defined more. We are in the experiment phase. I'm not sure if any one of them are working on that aspect. If you're working, we would like to connect. We have taken up that for children with special needs at multiple angles. In how do we give this touch and feel and make them even understand about these concepts. So for me, the inclusion would be on all angles, whatever the panel members spoke. Along with that, the children who are currently excluded from STEM, because STEM mostly theory or mathematics, they are not able to understand, they are not able to catch is what the current saying is. How do we take the STEM to them also to make them understand would be the inclusion.
Right, thanks for that, Suren. And you are absolutely right. STEM is not just about reading it from a book. I mean, it's all about visualization. It's about cognition that comes from actual learning by doing. And until we are able to, fire those cylinders and those parts of our neural brains and our networks, I don't think we will really be able to spark that curiosity. Now, I want to come to a few challenges or, how our interventions and our initiatives can get straitjacketed by the realities in which we operate. So CSR in itself has its own mandates and it works according to real, you do have certain processes and systems within which you need to operate. Now, within that, I'd like to understand how are you looking at sponsoring such initiatives that actually bring innovation in STEM education and can also bridge this digital divide that we started out with? Monica.
Thanks, Niharika, for the question. And I think it's very important that we speak about the issues, but also about what we really do. And I think just kind of going back to the great conversation that we had, I think I look into this intervention, from a point where Asim spoke about gender. But I think let's start it backwards. When globally we know that around 25% of tech roles are by women, 25% only, then 24 point something is a GM report that I'm quoting right now. So, so really, if that is where it is, I think we have a long way to go. And our intervention needs to be really holistic. I would say we need to start backward, yes, but we need to start from the girl child. We have to start from the family. We have to start from the community, the school. I mean, the intervention has to be holistic to be successful up there. And I think therefore I would say that the CSR programs that we would support is not just that setting up a STEM lab, but really all our programs talking and taking care of the gender lens that we need to really build up through all the education programs that we have. Because STEM comes after a point of time, only, after certain years that the child has really been into the education system. So I think that's what I say, starting early, the whole issue of the fear and anxiety, that we spoke about in the beginning, and very well started. This is built up in the mind of a child that even if maybe after a point of time, the family wants the child to take up, something in the STEM field, the girl, and here I'm talking about the gender sensitivity, that the girl herself would not be really, not be confident about really taking this up as a career. So I think we start from the early age with the family, schools, communities, in the school interventions, along with also supporting the entire journey till the child really grows up into a career of having more options for STEM career also for them. So I think therefore as CSR, as someone who's leading CSR, I would say that supporting all these innovative ideas for STEM education is something that we should support. And just one bit before I wrap this up is numbers are really important, and I think when we're talking about the scale where we need to have solutions in India, but I would say before jumping into numbers, we really need to see the impact and the in-depth impact that we are able to create in the lives of the children. Right now, as we speak, we know there are a lot of models, n number of models, and we know, having been in the sector, what really works, what doesn't work. But is our program really, catering to the in-depth issues and creating that in-depth zeal for learning for the child? And if yes, I think that's what the program for me would be. and would not really run only to kind of create numbers or just a model and just move on. So I think really want to give that hands-on experience to the child to feel and understand STEM much deeper than just the models which it will look. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Monica. I think I completely agree. It's not just about doing it within the school, and that's what our topic is all about, right? Doing it beyond the classroom and actually invigorating the family, community, and starting early. Curious to know how you are looking at innovation in STEM education and innovative initiatives in STEM education to bring and bridge this educational equity. Satyajit.
Thanks for the question, Niharika. And I think would appreciate, I think, what Monica brought up, and I think, and so so beautifully and insightfully explained what I think we were all trying to just sort of hint at. But I think, and I think I wanted to connect back to, I think, one of the points you made, Niharika, that look, CSR has certain maybe limitations and there's certain structures and sort of mandates that we deal with, and I think, and it's always been a grouse of mine that there's just too many rules around CSR, etc. While actually you do, I mean, as a while the overall aim is to obviously achieve that social impact, sometimes you get sort of trapped in trying to look at what is the how it connects with your objectives, and what are the and I think basically, and also somewhere driven by certain requirements, when the law asks you to look at impact. But I definitely do think, I think somewhere we need to move beyond just a statistical analysis. I think when we look at, and I think there are other connotations as well, if you just try to do something just to perhaps tick the box and just provide people with perhaps STEM education of any sort, just to say that look, I've provided that, or and I think Asim brought up a very interesting point of just somebody goes out there and says, okay, my STEM intervention just setting up labs around the country, and I think he gave a very good example of the fact that the STEM, the labs there, you open it, and he said, he gave the example that it gets packed up. I would say it could become the lunchroom for that school, right? Maybe the beakers are used to make sharbat next day. But the point, and this is a very genuine thing, we've gone to schools ourselves and seen labs set up which are locked up and sort of in disuse. And what has, and it creates a fundamental crisis or fundamental thought in your mind that are we doing the right thing? I think we have to balance. I think the critical balances, and like I said, I think while I was trying to give an example of what we did in South Africa, we're trying to think of doing something here as well, and I know many organizations do it, is that trying to create, trying to make STEM education attractive, trying to show the fun elements, right? I mean, when we grew up as well, and Niharika, of course, I grew up many years before you did. When I grew up as well, math and the STEM subjects were, even for us, were seen to be very serious subjects. There was no fun element to it. The math teacher used to always be probably the most strict teacher in school. People used to be scared, right? And there was this entire thing that, okay, if you have not scored certain percentage, you will not be able to go for STEM, right? So just breaking that entire thought process down and trying to make STEM education accessible to all, by making it more sort of open, by creating a buzz around STEM, doing maybe running some competitions, hackathons, and giving people some incentive that, okay, look, and STEM doesn't mean it's to the exclusion of other creative subjects, right? I mean, you can do some parts you can pick up. And for example, I had, for example, certain in my school time, I had taken eco-psychology as well as some STEM subjects, and I had a very kind counselor who sort of allowed me to mix and match. But and I think nowadays many of the private schools do have that thing, but in the public education system, how can we as CSR partners bring those in? So I think, just to sort of quickly sum it up from my side, I would say we have to really think outside the box. We can't just sort of rely on probably what things have been used by people outside, and ultimately having a outcome-driven thought, right? Not an output, not just looking at, okay, I've got to train 100 girls or I've got to train 100 boys only, but sort of seeing that, okay, where will that get us in the future? And I think Monica made a great example that, look, trying to then connect it back to, can we, through our initiatives, look at a future outcome of increasing the number of maybe women in the tech sector or in any, or maybe in the research sector, why only tech, right? In the academic sector as well.
No, absolutely agree. Thank you for that, Satyajit. And while we're on this question, I'm going to pass it on to Suren and say, how do we sponsor initiatives which are not just out of the box, but out of the STEM labs? Because I think as soon as we talk about innovation, we all think about the new box is the STEM lab in some way. So how do we do that, Suren?
Thank you. Since the numbers came up, even if you wouldn't have asked, I would have pitched in now to talk. Numbers, yes. While we speak about numbers, how do we see the impact or the scale of the program or give the exposure? For me, since I spoke about the numbers, I would also like to speak about what sort of exposure do we give beyond the box or beyond the STEM lab itself. To give two examples of our students who were in this journey, what we do with students, one, we teach, or through the coaches that we teach STEM education, we don't just teach them and keep them in the school, but we give them exposure to come outside to present what they learn. And we have been doing this for almost few years now to bring them to showcase what they have learned in our office space. Now, how that has helped, the students have gained a lot of confidence by coming and showcasing their projects, their learning to our employees in the office. That has gradually increased in a way to build their confidence level. And the highlight of this is two of our students were able to present their project in front of Prime Minister of India during the National Technology Day, which is a thing for us to be proud of. Two students who are from a very rural background, who has not even stepped out of their village, presented their project in front of Prime Minister of India because of our intervention, which is a proud moment. The next one is the students who again presented here national level, can they go beyond that? Two of our students again went to an international competitions to present, and they won a silver medal over there, competing with other countries and with a lot of well-off schools. When we tell well-off schools, people from, there was no criteria that students have to come from only these schools. It was an international competition. Again, these students from a rural background went to present and won. Now, this is what I see as beyond numbers of how do we give that exposure for these students to come to implement whatever they have learned. Now, out of the box thinking is also to give what can you do to bring these students out of their STEM labs. They always look for an opportunity. Can we create that opportunity? If we can do that, that could also be part of your project in bringing them out. Not just taking the STEM materials to their lab. After teaching, how do you even get them out to have it? That's where I see as out of the box.
Great, thank you for those.
Niharika, I have a point here.
Yeah, sure.
So you talked about one box, which is the STEM lab. The other box is the STEM kit. That is another box that has been oversold. So for us, when we are designing a project, sort of when we are analyzing a project, and even after signing the MOU, I think the challenge for me is to assess the inclination of the child itself, whether they want to study STEM or not. ऐसा तो नहीं कि we are pushing the envelope too much. कि नहीं STEM नहीं होगा तो नहीं होगा. मतलब I have studied social science, she has studied social science, we're sort of doing fine in our careers. But are we telling the student कि नहीं STEM नहीं पढ़ोगे तो something bad will happen? Or is it, and that is what the NEP is also talking about, it is the rational thinking that you want to impart in the society and through the schools and the education system in a whole. That is where the STEM education becomes important. But you have to tell the child that, okay, even if you're not studying STEM. So I once went to a bowling camp, the cricket bowling camp. They told me कि जितना वो bowling hand important है, the non-bowling hand is also important. You have to make the action in. So if you're working on the non-STEM subject also, then probably the child will be able to make a informed choice कि नहीं ये भी ठीक है, लेकिन मेरा inclination क्योंकि so and the second part is because we are doing a scholarship program for higher education. If the child wants to drop out after the second year, so that you have made a commitment, कि, okay, you study BTech, we'll sponsor you for the next 4 years. But what if the child says, कि नहीं, peer pressure, I took the decision and I now want to drop out. As a donor, are you okay? That is where the critical juncture is. That you have to tell yourself कि अब बच्चे को नहीं पढ़ना है या you have to assess the need, कि where it came from. That is the challenging part for us, at least for me when we are deciding the projects.
Interesting. Thank you for that, Asim. And we always need to be cognizant of the fact that while we are looking at proliferation of STEM education and STEM mindsets, we shouldn't go just bend over backward and go the other way. At the same time, you brought about an interesting point about the impact of initiatives, and I think even Satyajit brought that up. And being part of a not-for-profit, I know, most of the times we're only stuck in building this log frame, which has input, output, outcome, impact. And I want to understand from this esteemed panel here, what is it that you would like to measure and in that log frame that helps you to really evaluate the impact of the initiative that you are sponsoring? And within that Excel sheet, the log frame that we have, where does curiosity, joy of learning, and exploration feature there? Anyone who'd like to take that?
I think I already spoke about the numbers and the, yeah, Monica, you can, no, please.
I think Asim really kind of touched upon it, and I think this is a beautiful question. And I would say that the real impact would be two ways. One is really seeing how are the kids really reciprocating or interested in it. I'll just give a very small example. Also looking at the time here, that for us it was a successful success because the government school principals reported that the attendance of the children reached out to almost 80% during the days when the STEM classes were there. And I think that's a kind of impact that we would want to see in the programs. So it's nothing that we're really pushing, but a beautiful way of looking into, are we really impacting? And secondly, I see that STEM is not just, the labs we're talking about, the kids we're talking about, and I would really say it as STEM for life. Because what we really want to build is whether the child wants to take up tech in the coming times or not. The child really builds up to be a person who is curious, who's able to kind of look at things from different perspectives, build up innovative solutions for whatever the world needs really, and work in collaboration. And I think these are the kind of two kind of impacts, one tangible from a program perspective, but another very, very deep from a soft skills perspective is what we would really want to see.
Sure, yeah, thank you. I think we are running out of time, but my point to add, there could be a lot of educators here and who are part of STEM. I will come from the ESG angle now because we are all talking about a lot of STEM which involves electronic items. And we are procuring left, right, and center to build like STEM kits, Asim was telling. We are having a lot of electronic items that is coming into the market because of this education. Now, down the line, when we see for the next 4-5 years, how are we going to responsibly dispose that, or what sort of action that we could take? So my request or closing remarks to all the educators here on STEM, do also have a plan on how do you reuse or discard responsibly the electronic items that comes into STEM, which is our next plan also, because we run 100 schools. We have huge electronic items that we are using, and we are working towards, again, discarding it responsibly. Would like to hear from a lot of you if you have any plans around it, but yeah, that's my closing.
So yeah, just before Niharika pick up, I would say great point, and with great power comes great responsibility, as we all know. So use your STEM kits responsibly. Don't open them, don't unbox them unless you really need them.
Right, thank you all so much for all your inputs, and now we'll open up for some Q&A.
We have only 40 seconds left. Okay, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we do have for questions. You can even mention whom are you directing the question to. Please keep it only questions.
Right. I'm Vajanti Shankar, the Executive Director for Center for Science of Student Learning. So I've been in the field of education assessments, basically large-scale assessments, the last 25 plus years in this country. And we work both in Skill India as well as education. My question is that, like, when we do large-scale assessments of children across this country, especially even in STEM, of course, you all spoke about gender and stuff. And you know that NEP 2020 talks about, rote learning, which took 20 years of hard work to get them to recognize. But now, other labs and various other things have come, and most people are, distributing STEM kits, STEM labs, etc. But what I find is that to a large extent, when we do testing on thinking skills in this country, less than 10% of students as well as adults have thinking skills. And he spoke about rational thinking as NEP talking about it. But I find that most often STEM is also taught in a very, very procedural manner, right? Oh, so this is the kit, I need to assemble this, or what you do this, and what is the inference? All of us have gone through science labs in schools, right? Everybody does the same experiment, everybody comes to the same inference and same conclusion. So where is thinking in this, and what are you all doing to improve thinking in this country?
Okay. I do agree with that, because the moment we reach out to masses, something comes as default. That means you roll out this because you cannot intervene everywhere to customize it. I do agree with the point that there are a lot of things that are coming as a framework. Whether it fits or not, it has to be given. But how can we change that is to have more resources. Say you run 100 labs, how many resources do you have? To make that intervention possible as per the need. Are we giving, or are we analyzing the child knowledge level to even give that education, whether the child needs it or not, or whether the child is interested or not? My solution, just to keep it simple, is to increase the number of interventions, increase more resources in the interventions, which can bring in a lot of thinking, designing, or the need as per the school or as per the child. But to reach masses, there has to be a framework. But can we be flexible in that framework? Can we be agile in that framework to fit into what is needed in each of it? That's what I would keep it. But we would be happy to share our impact assessment that we are doing for these 100 schools, and what sort of measure that we do, how we intervene. We'll be happy to discuss.
I can also take a stab at that. And I completely agree. And I think one of the things that we need to do within the education system is empower our teachers better, because they are going to impart the kind of learning they have received. And therefore, there needs to be a generational shift that teachers need to make to train the next level. And at our organization at Khan Academy, we are doing a lot towards training and teaching teachers. We've recently launched an amazing AI tool which actually helps teachers think through what kind of activities they can use to introduce a concept, what kind of lesson hooks could be used to generate excitement and asking the right questions, which in the classroom can spark that curiosity amongst children. And yes, this alone cannot help it, but this I think would be one way amongst the different ways that Suren also spoke about, which could help in bridging this divide between rote learning and actual learning for the joy of learning.
I think we can take one last question, if there are any else. Yeah. Can someone give the mic?
Hello. So it was a very informative session. But I have a doubt. Like last month, IMF has released a report, and it says that women they risk out losing uh, when we shift to green jobs, and they further state that closing the gender gap in STEM would accelerate the transition and make it more inclusive. So I would like your thoughts, especially Niharika ma'am or Manika ma'am, if you could.
Could you repeat the question once? Sorry.
Okay. So IMF has stated that women will lose out when we transition to green jobs. That is what they are stating. And they are saying that we need to make the STEM more inclusive, and that will reduce like women losing out of jobs when we transition into sustainability and all that.
Just I think, I mean, I just have a thought which I would say, isn't it true for everyone the way the way the world is evolving, you know, the way the issues are coming up or the problems that we're having. I think sustainability is key. Like I think very beautifully we spoke about how we, even in a STEM kits, we need to see, you know, this example that how are we really going to dispose it of. But I think this is something which is very key for everyone, you know, as organizations, as people, we need to upgrade ourselves towards having solutions which are greener. So I wouldn't say it is only for a particular gender, but for everyone. That's what I think. Yeah.
Just add it.
Yeah, and
Yeah, since green jobs came up, a point to add is green jobs is definitely not going to put one gender backward and the other gender forward. Green jobs is going to increase the opportunities that is going to come for all the gender, that I would say, because we are also into skilling or upskilling into green jobs, where we do have 50% of the gender into the green jobs, which is much more than the regular skilling that is happening. So what we are seeing currently with the green jobs is, it is being more interesting, it is being more comfortable for the women than men. While there are some parts that women are hesitant to take up, but there are green jobs which is much more convenient than the regular ones also. Maybe the report could have a lot of thoughts around it, but what we see from the practical level is green jobs is definitely going to make more inclusive or be more inclusive. Yeah, SM as a last point.
See,
Niharika.
people at the IMF are smart people. You know? They know the market sentiment is towards the STEM education and towards women. So they can write report, whatever. That is their sort of positive vibe to women education. So we should all welcome it. But, and that is also, I don't know whether they have given some scientific evidence of whatever they have said. But the point here is कि आप 20 साल पहले बात कर रहे थे कि जेंडर गैप है लिटरेसी रेट में. अब जब लिटरेसी रेट थोड़ा आसपास आ गया तो आप कह रहे स्टेम गैप है. तो अब मैम भी वो कह रही थी कि उन्होंने एक कीवर्ड पकड़ लिया कि वो कौन सा वर्ड था, रैशनल थिंकिंग. तो मैंने कहा कि सोसाइटी में यू आर कमिंग फ्रॉम अ सोसाइटी विच इज़ हाईली सुपरस्टिशियस. अब वहाँ पे रैशनल थिंकिंग की NEP बात कर रहा है. तो देयर इज अ लॉन्ग गैप विच हैज़ टू बी ब्रिज्ड. So IMF can say whatever they want. They have enough money to say. Even they can prove me right or wrong. But आप क्या कहना चाहते हो और हम क्या कह रहे हैं, that is important. हमारे CSR projects जो हम कह रहे हैं, are we walking the talk or not? That is our purview and we'll try to do it. Thank you so much.